You've heard the word decibel thrown around all the time, right? How loud a rock concert is, how quiet a library needs to be. But what if I told you that almost every time you've heard it, it's been used, well, kind of wrong? That a decibel, all by itself, is a totally meaningless number? Yeah, today we're going to decode this thing. This quote right here gets straight to the heart of it, and it kind of messes with your head, doesn't it? A measurement that isn't really a measurement, a number that's useless on its own. It sounds impossible, but believe it or not, that's the absolute truth about the decibel. And that, of course, brings us to the big, obvious question. If it's not what we all think it is, then what on earth is a decibel? Well, that is exactly what we are going to break down step by step right now. All right, the very first piece of the puzzle, the decibel's big secret, is that it's all about relativity. You have to stop thinking about it as a fixed amount and start thinking about it as a comparison. Okay, this is the single most important takeaway. So I want you to forget thinking about a decibel like you think about an inch or a pound or a gallon. A decibel doesn't actually measure a thing by itself. It's just a way of talking about the relationship, the ratio between two different things. And this mountain analogy is the perfect way to understand it. I mean, look at the left. A mountain is 2,000 high. 2,000 what? High compared to the town at its base, compared to the lowest point in the valley. See, without a reference point, that number is totally useless. But then look at the right, 2,000 feet above sea level. Boom, now it's a real solid measurement because we have a reference, sea level, that everyone understands. And here's the official definition just to lock it in your brain. The key words here are ratio and two values. A decibel always, and I mean always, involves comparing one thing to another. Okay, so if it's just a ratio, why do we even bother using it for sound? Why not just use something straightforward like pressure units? Well, the answer is actually incredible, and it's built right into our own ears. It's all about how nature designed our internal volume knob. Our ears are just amazing pieces of biological engineering. Think about it. They can handle the absolute quietest sound, like a pin dropping, and also the deafening roar of a jet engine. That range is just astronomical. And to handle that, our hearing doesn't work on a simple 1, 2, 3 linear scale. It's more like it has a built-in compressor, squishing that huge range down into something our brains can actually process. And this brings us to the magic of the logarithmic scale. That's the fancy mathematical term for what our ears are already doing naturally. So instead of counting up evenly, 1, 2, 3, 4, a log scale jumps by powers of 10. 10, 100, 1,000. It's the perfect way to wrangle a massive range of numbers and make them manageable. And here it is. This is the aha moment. The whole reason we use the decibel for sound is because this logarithmic, ratio-based system is a beautiful match for the way our own hearing works. It's a scale that was practically made for humans because it mirrors how we actually perceive loudness. Okay, that's enough theory. Let's make this practical. Now that we get the why, let's dive into the how with a couple of super useful rules of thumb that audio engineers use every single day. So here are the two big formulas. But hey, don't let the math scare you off, I promise. Just focus on that column on the right. Here's the deal. When you're talking about power, like from an amplifier, if you double it, the level goes up by 3 decibels. But if you're talking about voltage, like an audio signal, doubling it gives you a 6 decibel boost. Let's actually see that. So here we go, from 100 watts of power to 200 watts. I mean, we literally doubled the raw power. But in the language of decibels, that huge jump is only a 3 dB increase. That's that logarithmic compression in action. Pretty cool, huh? And now let's look at voltage. Same idea. We double it from 100 to 200, but look at the result. This time, it's a 6 dB jump. Knowing the difference between how power and voltage behave is absolutely fundamental in the world of audio. Okay, let's bring this all back home. We started this whole thing with the problem of the meaningless decibel. Now we're going to fix it. We're going to find our sea level and give the decibel a real job to do. See, in the professional world, you can't just have these vague comparisons floating around. So standards were created. These are just a couple of common examples. When you see dBm, it just means decibels compared to a reference of 1 milliwatt. And when you see dBV, it means decibels compared to a reference of 1 volt. And that is the secret key. That tiny little letter tacked on to the end is what changes everything. It takes the floating relative dB and anchors it to a solid real-world value. A measurement like +4 dBm is no longer just a comparison. It is an absolute specific level that any audio engineer on the planet will understand. It has become our feet above sea level. And that brings us to the end. So now you get it. The decibel is decoded. But it kind of makes you think, doesn't it? What else out there do we measure this way? The Richter scale for earthquakes, the pH scale for acidity. It turns out we use these clever comparative scales all over the place. It's a really fascinating way to look at the world around us.